So what brings us to an ever closer, costlier, and chaotic union? Well, let us start with an ever closer union. The EU is set to host a conference on the future of Europe this year. And of course, this conference will be totally benign. After all, the European Council blocked the European Parliament's request to mention treaty change from the final declaration. And we shouldn't forget that the great anti-federalist, defender of sovereignty, champion of the nation state, MEP for the United States of Europe, Guy Verhofstadt, will lead the European Parliament's delegation to this conference. What could possibly go wrong? Well, the Treaty of Lisbon, aka EU Constitution, was the brainchild of a debate on the future of Europe at the Laeken European Council in December 2001. Putting aside my concerns, I tabled a pragmatic and non-ideological individual motion for resolution, requesting that the conference be delayed because, we have a little thing you might have heard of called the corona pandemic. So maybe, just maybe, we should wait before hosting any big conferences. I'm sure the resolution will receive a warm, broad support by the EU Federalists and the EP's Constitutional Affairs Committee. Danish Prime Minister referred to the multi-financial framework, the EU 7-year budget as gakgak, which is Danish for completely insane. The frugals protested, but they were outnumbered. Germany gave in early, but was there a veto? No. Was there a budget cut, or was the budget frozen? No. The new generation EU, aka debt generation EU, is revolutionary. In fact, it has been called the EU's Hamiltonian moment. It will be made of grants and loans. Putting aside the moral hazard of disbursing over 300 billion euros worth of grants, it lacks a legal basis. I tabled an amendment to the European Parliament's resolution on this issue in 2020. It read, and I quote, "Disputes the legality of the next generation EU with regard to Article 311 TFEU, notes that the EU will take on a debt of 750 billions to be distributed as grants, loans, and to fund parts of the budget." The Commission's own website even stated as late as the 29th of June 2020 that EU borrowing is only permitted to finance loans to countries and that the EU cannot borrow to finance its budget. Isn't it ironic then that in these times of debates over the rule of law in the EU, that the EU is making something that in America would be called unconstitutional and that in Brussels is called a breach of the treaties? It's very ironic. Pardon my Swedish here. Nu får ni vara tysta för pappa pratar med hela Europa. Nu får ni respektera pappa. Sorry, had to be a dad there for a while. So, talking about chaos, what is it that brings us into an ever chaotic union? The TLDR version of the EU's approach to migration is to have its left bleeding heart open borders cake and eat it too. By that I mean it tries to externalize border control to third countries such as Turkey, Libya, and Morocco, while at the same time proclaiming that it is open to all who are deserving of refuge. Say Denmark sinks into the sea, and just shy of 6 million, 100% genuine certified Danish refugees need a new home. All the Nordic countries, plus the Anglosphere, would happily take them in without any concerns for integration, let alone assimilation. Libya has 5 million people. If the same thing happened, of course we would assist with emergency humanitarian aid, but taking 5.2 million Libyans, even if you divide them proportionally into the EU, would have serious short and long-term repercussions on our institutions, our democracy, our way of life. This basic distinction, this basic realization is not done by the center left in the European Union, and that is why we are heading towards chaos. Thank you for your patience and for your attention. Well, I think that for starters, anywheres, that is people, urbanites, well-educated, liberal people, such as those in Brussels, need to start listening to the somewheres, those who are rooted somewhere, often on the countryside, so on and so forth. The Brussels elite is made up of somewheres, and they are intent on pursuing their ideological goals no matter the cost. You saw that with regards to labor migration within the EU, for instance, where I think that a slower pace of integration actually would have meant that the UK would still be inside the European Union today. At least it could have meant that. We see it now with regards to migration, where the majority in the European Parliament, as well as the responsible Commissioner Ylva Johansson, stresses the importance of the right to come to Europe and apply for asylum, despite the ever-increasing migration pressure on Europe, and despite the prognosis from different sources that Europe will face a wave of migration that we have never seen before. So what these people do is to disregard popular concerns over migration in favor of their ideological ambitions, and that comes with a price tag, and that price tag is increased Euroscepticism. Another issue where they would do very well in listening to somewheres would be environmental issues. The European Commission is now intent on banning lead ammunition in the whole of Europe, which would severely affect sport shooting, would severely affect hunting in my country. For instance, they are claiming that lead is to be prohibited in wetlands, while defining almost 100% of the Swedish soil as wetlands. So this is the kind of legislation you see from people who have hardly ever seen, a park in their whole life, let alone a real forest. This perspective and actually being pragmatic, that's what the EU should do, but they won't. And that is what scares me. With regards to financial aspects, the Swedish Parliament is voting on the Next Generation EU package tomorrow. And of course, the EU nor the Swedish center-left government would not want the Swedish people to vote on this in a referendum, because it would heavily vote against it. So instead, it pushes through it, and it will then sow a seed for a future Swexit debate, I think. I think Sweden is where Britain was in the middle of the 90s. So you see increasing parts of the center-right becoming increasingly Eurosceptic because of the sense that Brussels is doing what they're doing without ever asking us for our opinion. When I, as a conservative, when I'm, agreeing with people that I have nothing else in common with on this issue, then something new is going on. And that is what you see in Sweden. New coalitions will will evolve from this Hamiltonian moment. Before Brussels knows it, it will have created a problem all by itself, and due to its own, what do you call it? Grand ambitions.
Thank you very much, Charlie.